Hi, welcome to this episode of the Broke Girl Society podcast. I'm your host, Christina, and Kelly's story is going to be a little bit different than what we've heard in previous episodes. She is the wife of a recovering compulsive gambler, and together they were over 4 months in recovery, working their separate recoveries together. And so I met her in a recovery meeting, and she was kind of there to kind of get a different perspective, to get the addict's perspective, as she's trying to understand this addiction, which is really, really great. And I just love the fact that she was in there. She just wanted to know about it. She really just wanted to go all in and help her husband recover from his addiction. So I just asked her if she would be interested in having a conversation and sharing it with others on the podcast, and she was willing to do it. So let's just go ahead and jump into the episode. And I'm hoping I showed up for her in this. It was a little bit out of my normal comfort zone, but she's so great, and I look forward to working with her on future episodes. So let's talk to Kelly. So, hey, Kelly, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, do you want to kind of let us know a little bit about your story? I don't really know that much about it because I just met you last week. So I would love to hear about your story as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. So my husband and I have been together for 11 years. When we first met, he was very open about past addictions that he had. He had past drug addictions, alcohol addictions. When I had met him, he had just gotten clean of that, I think for about 9 to 10 months. So I've never struggled with addiction before. I never truly understood it, but I just figured that he sounded great. I figured that he was recovered from it. So I felt like I never had to worry about any of it. It was never a thought in my mind. So then about 3 years ago, we were kind of having a hard time. We had to move in with his family. We were trying to save for a house at that point. We had two children. We have two children, two young boys. And so, I didn't realize, I guess, that, Steve had been having a lot of hard time with everything financially. He was having a rough time just dealing with it, having to accept help, I guess, living with his family and stuff. So I had found out, I basically stumbled upon it. We were looking into buying a house, and I had somebody look into his credit. And all these credit cards came up under his name. So I was questioning that. And when I questioned him on it, he basically just told me that it was, basic necessities like gas and food here and there, because he was trying to build up his credit. And then I did some more digging with it because something just didn't feel right. So then I looked on his credit card statements, and I saw things from, I think it was FanDuel back then. So I questioned him, and then that's when the first time it came out was that, he was doing gambling. Again, I thought that it could have had something to do with his addiction, but I didn't think anything of it. I basically just told him to stop doing it, and, let's just move on. And, we had a rough week, but then life kind of went back to normal. And then we bought our house, and we bought a house 2 years ago. And, I found out, probably, I think we're at about almost 4 months ago, I found out that he was gambling again. He was using his 401k. He would go and get like these credit cards, like the gift cards from, Rite Aid or something, and he would use that. Again, it was a crazy way of how I stumbled upon it, but it was a really hard thing to go through with him. And that was how I realized, okay, this is an addiction, and we have to take care of it. Luckily, I had a friend that was kind of going through something similar with her boyfriend and stuff. So she was able to help me through it and help me see it. But yeah, it's been a rough 4 months for both of us, for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds really good that you are you've got a friend that can kind of help you walk through it too. Unfortunately, she's going through it herself. Now, when you confronted him again on the credit cards and things like that, and you had that conversation, and you said this time you addressed it differently, like you looked at it differently. How has it been since you were able to kind of look at it differently? Or let's back up here. How did you look at it differently? Like, what made you look at it differently this time?
Well, at first, when I first found out about it, I was so angry. I mean, it's just, at first I had no idea how deep we were in. I didn't know anything. So basically, my first tackle was that I needed to take control over the situation, meaning that I had to find out how much debt we were in. I needed to take over all the finances. He was paying the mortgage. So my biggest thing was, oh my God, are we going to lose the house? So once I tackled it in that way, like I basically sat down with him that night. He had gotten home from work so late. So when he got home, I just made him calmly explain to me I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know what happened, why it happened. I needed to take everything over. So I was making lists. I was tackling it in that way. And then because basically I could have flipped out, I could have lost my mind, I could have left him. But again, we had two small children. So I kind of had to think a little bit deeper. And plus because I love him. So I wasn't ready to just walk away from the situation. I wanted to help him. So again, I sought my own help in this as well, because my initial reaction was that I need to understand addiction. I need to understand why he was doing what he was doing. And I just needed to understand it. That was my biggest thing, is I kept telling him, I don't understand this. Why would you do this? How could you do this to us? So he actually, from listening to podcasts himself, he heard of a way that we can get help. So I was able to, through like Gavanon, I was able to find a therapist that I went to. So I went to a therapist almost right away. I talked to my therapist about everything that was going on. So he's been a huge help to me as well. But Steve and I, we were having countless conversations of everything. We were trying to dig so deep into him to try to figure out what was making him do this. And we did. We were able to figure out things that had happened in his past, in his childhood. He's actually going to the same therapist that I go to help him. And, it's been wonderful. It's been great for both of us. Now, I was naive to think that I was cured of this. And I was actually going to tell my therapist that I no longer need him. He did his job, everything's great. But I'm learning now that there's not really a cure for this. And I'm just as much in this recovery as Steve is. Because I'm on an emotional roller coaster. One day I could be up, the next day I could be down. So that's been very, very hard. But I'm basically trying to do the opposite of what I did the last time. Instead of just telling him, stop it, and just let him figure everything out. Both of us are kind of in this together, and we're both trying to figure it out together.
And that's amazing. I love that you are, you say that, hey, this recovery is together for both of us, because that's 100% how it's got to be. And you talk about, like the emotional roller coaster for an addict myself. When I was first started recovery, the emotions are just overwhelming, especially those first 30 days. But on top of that, we're coming into recovery and we're dealing with all the guilt and the shame that we've struggled with hiding this addiction, and lying and the manipulation and all those things. So we have all this weighing on us. And then when we share it with our partner, we bring them into the fold. Now we've got the heaviness of their feelings, their feelings of betrayal and just, it becomes extremely heavy. And so it's very important in those early days to feel secure and to have some sort of support. Because it's almost impossible to move past it if you you can't do it on your own. And, having support is the most important thing. And when you have support from the partner that that you hurt, that will go a long way, especially as he works to rebuild your relationship and the trust that he needs to rebuild with you. I wholeheartedly believe that he'll come out a stronger person.
Yeah,
I look
absolutely.
forward to kind of kind of hearing those updates along the way. Because really, you're the first affected spouse that I've really talked to, other than my own. And a woman talking to a man, I got a lot of when I brought him into it, he didn't understand it either, but he didn't really even try. I broke it all down for him, and I was just like, this is what I've been doing. This is why we don't have any money. This is why this is this. And he was just like, okay, well, there's no point in going back, is there? And so it was very like, I, I was mad, more mad at myself than he was mad at me. And then I was mad at him for not being mad at me. And then it was just like, as a woman, this whole roller coaster of emotions. But the thing is because he didn't tackle it like you are, like most women would, get in the middle of it. Let's get to the problem. Let's figure this out. Because he did kind of not really get involved. I get instances of his anger throughout. Like it's not in that night where you just hash it out and like he just told you everything and you guys just started on it. For me, even now, almost 6 months into my recovery, he'll lash out at me because he hasn't dealt with the whole emotion of everything. He's just being a man about it and not really focusing on it. So I think that's a big deal that you got involved in the Gavanon, and you're really just trying to understand it, that part of
Yeah,
it.
it's definitely on this side of it. It's not easy, and uh, it's it's very, I don't want to say it's emotionally draining because it's not. It's a lot. It's just a lot of emotions, and I feel like for a man especially, men they don't really know how to react when it comes to emotions. So, um it's just you have to it's not an easy thing to go, and as much as it may seem like um I have it together and like we're doing, it's hard. I mean, this entire thing, this has probably been one of the hardest things that I've ever done, and it has made our relationship stronger. It really has. And we say a lot of times that we're not how what he did, but we're kind of in a sense glad that this did happen because it's teaching us now. He for so long, like you said, he for so long held on to all of this, and once he was able found out about it, he said that he felt an overwhelmingness of just like a huge weight was lifted off of him because he held on to so many lies and he held back from like so many things from me. So he, in a sense, he felt free of it, which is great. But him feeling free of it, now it's almost like I was carrying more of the weight.
Right.
So, it's not to go through something like this when, obviously it's, I can't say I didn't ask for it because, I guess I never realized, especially at first when, Steve was very open with me about his addictions, like I had said, and stuff like that. I never knew that this would play into my life. I just thought that, again, like that, just that it was over, everything was fine, because I never understood addiction. I cannot say that I understand it now. I'm trying to, but I guess it's just more of just like he's not the only one. I've heard of a lot of people's stories, and it's everyone seems to have like that same thinking that you know just that there's that normal thinking when you're in an addiction, and it's I'm never going to understand. I don't think people that don't have addictions are ever going to fully understand or fully feel it. But like you said, the only thing you could offer is support. But it is a very hard thing to do. We started out with a very strong relationship. So I mean, thank God, because I feel like if you don't have a strong relationship, then it's going to be extremely hard to get through with somebody, you know. But if you surround yourself with the support, and people, the spouses need it just as much as the people in the addiction. I think that everybody just needs
Oh
that
yeah.
support with them. So that's the biggest thing. And unfortunately, people like your spouse and stuff like that, they'll, once he's kind of ready and in that mindset, I think that things will be better for both of you. But you have to want to be in it, and it's a lot.
It is a lot, and it's just like you said, you didn't sign up for it. You didn't know how this was going to affect you later on. Um, and you're right. We don't ever graduate from it. As the addict ourselves, and as the loved one of an addict, there's never a graduation date. It's something that will just be a part of our lives for the rest of our life. But as long as we focus, and it always takes priority, we can live a happy, healthy life without gambling or any addiction. It's just maintaining that focus, and doing that deep work, like you said, digging down. They say a lot of times these addictions do stem from early childhood trauma that isn't addressed. Work stress and things like that. We just learn these unhealthy coping tools. And like for me, what started mine was a divorce. And then I started going up their social because all my friends were having babies. They were married. I wasn't connecting with any of them. And so I just needed something that was safe. I wasn't somebody that went to the bars or anything like that. So I needed some place that was safe to hang out. And then it became kind of the social hour. But I gambled for about 15 years. And the first half of that was controlled recreational gambling. But even in those few moments that I gambled early on, I was still building this unhealthy coping, skill. That's where I went after my divorce. That's kind of where I just didn't have to feel the feelings from my divorce. And, then as things in my life happened, I just found myself going more and more and more because I didn't feel those things when I was there. And then, it turned into a full-on compulsive gambling addiction, which was extremely detrimental to my life. And this is why I say those early days are really important, because we have to feel all those emotions that we didn't feel for so many years. And then on top of that, we have to feel the emotions of everybody else around us, the people that we hurt, people that we lied to. So that's why a lot of times you see early relapses and early slips, because it is so overwhelming. I mean, it's not like we're these monsters who don't care of what we did. It's not, I can't speak for everybody, of course. But I know I could speak for a big majority of us that when we're in this deep addiction, it's not that we don't care. It's just that we can't seem to make that right choice. But now coming out of it, and I see things more clearly, of course, you see where you rationalize things you should have never rationalized. You see, how it affected everybody around you that you couldn't see before. Like coming out of it, I was just thinking I affected, like my sister and kind of like the financial aspects of it. But really, I affected my sister's spouse. And I didn't think of it like that, because when I hurt my sister, I hurt him. And, it just goes to this bigger, wider circle that we can't comprehend deep in addiction. And so, it's really hard coming out of it too, because of all that. But as a woman, not only are you dealing with the emotions from finding out about his addiction, but you're also dealing with just the women emotions that we have to deal with all the time, right? That men don't normally deal with. So like, he might seem like he's dealing with this better than you are, or that he's just going on about it easier than you are, because he doesn't have that whole other set of just crazy monthly emotions where, like, one minute you guys are cool, everything's great, you're moving forward, the next minute you're like, want to punch him in the throat or whatever. It's just kind of like, this whole, yeah. So when you talk about that, I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, so how was your experience with Gamanon? Was it, you said it was helpful. So for maybe somebody listening in, like, would you recommend Gamanon?
I do, 100%. Yep. I never even knew about Gavanon until my friend told me about Al-Anon, and then she actually sent me a link for Gavanon. So I attend some meetings once a week. So just that, I mean, you're talking to complete strangers and stuff like that. But I mean, even just seeing and hearing what some of these people are talking about, it's like, wow, I feel the same exact way. And, um, I have gone to my sister a lot, as my crutch, and she's helped me tremendously through all of this. But, going to Gamanon, it's helpful to talk to other people that are going through the same thing. Like, you know, there'll be somebody that will say something that I'm like, oh my God, I literally just thought that, you know. So it's like you talk that and you kind of get it out. And I was having a little bit of a rough week last week, just with the anger and stuff, just that I just could not get rid of this anger. So I did turn to my meetings, and the women in there definitely helped me a lot. And, they made me talk about it. And that's the thing too. It's like they help you come out of your shell a little bit more. So that was definitely helpful for me. So I do 100% recommend Gamanon. Um, you and it's great because you don't get anybody in there with any type of bad comments or anything. You don't get the judgment. You get none of that. You're just able to freely talk about whatever you want. And, it's great. It's great. So when I was telling them about my week last week and how I just felt angry and stuff, you know, they were all there. They've all been there, it, it helps a lot. And it's just the added support. Like I said, biggest thing is surrounding yourself with support. That's the most important thing. And also too, I'm trying to do things for myself. I'm trying to go to the gym more. I'm trying to pick up a hobby, so that's also helping. And that's also what Steve's trying to do. He's trying to go back to playing his guitar more. Same thing with working out and stuff like that. So I think that's helpful also to just kind of worry about yourself as well.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you say that, because everything you just said, that's how I feel about my meetings. Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly how I feel about my meetings. Like, they say things and I connect. And like when I'm having a really bad week, I crave those meetings because I need that support. And I think too, it's good to point out, our partners need that support just as much as we do. I mean, they are just as affected by it. They may not understand the addiction, but they understand the hurt that was caused to them, or the damage that our addiction, caused them. And so you need your own support system to help you get through that. And so I think, and really, like, I guess because it's a reverse situation for me, because women, we need more a lot of times than just a conversation. Sometimes we just need a deeper conversation. We need to dig, we need to figure this out. Where a lot of times men are just like, we're cool, and it's like, no, it's not. And so for most of the people that probably listen to this podcast, their spouses are male. And so they may not be thinking about that support system for them as much, because they may not be as willing to do therapy or counseling or Gamanon or things like that. And so it's just kind of interesting to hear you talk about that, because you do need that support system. They need that support system, but I would say a lot of our spouses won't go that far. They won't do that for themselves. And so it can be really, really challenging, I think, on the opposite side of things.
Yeah. Thanks. Steve has been very open with everything. I mean, again, I'm still really trying to understand addiction and things like that, because like I said, I don't think I'm ever going to fully understand it. I think that I have the same fears as anybody else would have. Like, you're always going to have that what if in the back of your mind, which I'm trying to give up and things like that. But
But maybe
I
that's not
don't.
a bad thing. maybe that's not a bad thing to kind of have that in the back of your mind. Like, not maybe not throw it in his face, but I honestly,
Mhm.
I think I would want people, I think as addicts, we want everybody to just instantly forgive us, right? We want everybody to just instantly trust us again, instantly forgive us, but really we don't deserve that. Um, Even myself, I probably won't feel like I deserve it 2 years down the road. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if anything, if somebody, I just want to show somebody that they can trust me through my actions and by my choices. But I don't think as an affected partner that that's a bad thing to have in the back of your mind, because I think if you get too complacent and your partner gets too complacent, not saying that that's the road that he's going to go down. You know, as recovering addicts, of course, our goal is to always abstain and to live a gamble free life. But as an addict myself, I know I can't promise that. All I can promise is that I will do everything in my power not to. I can promise you that I don't want to. And I imagine
Right.
he feels the exact same way. But we can never promise we won't. Because that's just not realistic and that's not fair. But um, so I don't think that's a bad thing for you to have in the back of your mind, to know that hey,
Yeah.
we could go through a tough time, or he could get more stress at work or something. And if you kind of have that filtering in the back of your mind, then nobody's that complacent. And maybe you could catch it if you start to maybe see stress in him, or um, something, right? Or do you really just not want that feeling?
And no, I think it's just, I mean, it's a couple different things. It's hard to say exactly what feelings I want. I mean, my guard is now up, and I don't think it's ever going to go down. And that was, I think, one of my biggest challenges, because the type of person that I am, I've never had a guard up ever, with anybody. Just whether it be, past boyfriends or even in my family, just I've never had a guard up. So now all of a sudden I have this guard and there's all these emotions attached to it that I've never felt before. You know, normally if I was ever angry about something, it would be gone by the next day. I don't hold on to anger. I don't hold on to anything, but this anger was lingering, and no matter what I did, I tried to cry it out. I tried to vent to people, and it was just sitting there. And I was just like, I don't understand. Like, why can't I get this out? And it was literally, like you said, I just wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
And it's the only thought that goes through, not the only thought, but one of the biggest thoughts that kind of scare me a little bit is destruction. Like, I just feel like I just want to go and do the same thing he did to me, even though he's putting all this work in, he's doing all this. Like, I just at times get so angry that that's what I think. And then it dissipates, thankfully, and that's where Gavanon comes into play. But it's almost sometimes, or some days, it just makes me feel like I'm a little scared because I don't know this person that I've become. I'm able to talk myself down, or, just from the support and things, to kind of get down from that. But that's been the most, like, emotionally challenged thing for me to deal with. And, I'm going to keep working at it. But that's one of my heavy weights to kind of deal with. And, it's one day at a time, like they say. It's one day at a time for me too.
Yeah, and it is, and that's okay. I would imagine you're angry at just having to put a wall up. I would imagine that you're angry that it's changed you as a person. Before you were able to not have these walls, and you were not, you could trust people, and you could not have to look through and see something that you don't want to see in people. But now it's kind of caused you to have to do that. I can imagine that's probably where a lot of that anger comes from. Because I'm really very similar in the way that I let things roll off me. I've never carried anger. I've never carried grudges, things like that. And I would say for the most part, I'm still like that, because I am an affected partner in my own way, because my husband does have his own addiction. But so I kind of understand that to an extent. So I imagine that's probably where a lot of that anger comes from, and nobody could blame you for that, I don't think. Um, let's talk about kind of maybe some of the changes that you saw before you realized that there was a problem. Do you recall like certain instances where you're like, okay, something is different with him?
Oh yeah. Yes. I have noticed mainly coming up on when I found out. I mean, he was on his phone a lot because he did a lot of, he was mainly into sports gambling and, fantasy things. So I felt a lot of times he works a lot. He works up to 70 hours. He's never home. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I am always home with my children. So when he was home with them on weekends and things like that, I would always see him on his phone, and it would irritate me because I was like, you should be spending more time with the kids. Like, what are you doing on your phone? So there was that, and I had been telling him for years that there has been an emotional, almost like I felt disconnected from him in a way. And I could never tell why. Like it was just always something I had felt inside myself. But then I actually suffer from anxiety. So I kind of, I would just kind of tell myself that I'm being crazy, it's my anxiety talking, I'm not seeing this clearly. But I always felt like there was something there that just, it just wasn't right. And then, yeah, I'm just trying to think if there was anything else that, um, there was other signs too. It was like signs that I always felt like he was kind of hiding something from me. But again, I just always chalked it up to anxiety. But there were certain things like I wanted to do axes together over like from last year or whatever. So he would always try to find reasons on why, like either we would forget or we'd get busy, but every time I would say something to him, there would always kind of be an excuse on why the taxes aren't being done. So then I had gone to a trip in April, and he just said, you know what, I'm just going to do them. And then, that was it. So that was kind of a red flag. But again, I just ignored it, and come to find out the reason being because he had used 401k money and things like that. So he had to write that off. And that would have been a major red flag for me. So there have been different things that have come up that I've just either I kind of turned the other way, or I kept, just saying that I'm being crazy. Like, and then when I found out about it, that was another reason why I was so angry, because now it's like, if I do feel a certain way, or if I feel like there's something wrong, you know, I'm not going to be so quick to call myself crazy. But then, you know, I lash out and I sound crazy. So, that's also been very taxing on my emotions. It's just the constant, is it anxiety, or am I feeling something? Am I sounding crazy? So,
Yeah.
that's been hard. But yes, there are signs. I feel like I played into it too because I sometimes just ignored it. So
Well, but I mean, how can you really tell the difference though? I know for me, um, I think the disconnect is really common because our brains are just thinking about gambling. Like we lose interest in just everyday things that give a lot of people joy. When you get to that compulsive side of the gambling, it's just like any addiction. You just crave it, you think about it, and you don't realize the things that are going on around you because you're so absorbed in it. And I think our affected spouses or family or whoever, they just sense the distance. They don't sense, and then they start to kind of blame themselves, like especially a spouse, like, oh, is not attracted to me, or is it something I'm doing or something like that. And so, the emotional toll that must have had on you, but in his mind, it's not that at all, or the other person's mind, it's not that at all. They love you, they care about you or whatever. It's just, they're just choosing the gambling in that moment. As awful as that sounds, that's the honest to goodness truth. And you know, it's it's interesting to hear you say that, because it really just kind of puts that to home for me myself. Are you kind of feeling right now like it's not going to settle down? Like you're fearful that you're always going to feel like this?
No, especially after talking with other women, a lot of the women in Gavanon are older. So it seems like things for them have calmed down. The only thing that I find with Gavanon, I actually follow a Facebook group as well. There are a lot of people that talk about the negativity behind it, just with their compulsive gambler has gone back to it, they relapsed. So again, because of my anxiety, it kind of almost like triggers me a little bit to read things like that. Or even if I hear something like that, I get like a little bit triggered, and that sparks the whole what if thing. Um, but I do think eventually we will get there as long as we keep working at it. That's the thing. It's the biggest thing is we keep working at it. I can't stop and he can't stop. He has to do his own thing. I have to do my own thing. So it's just I feel like right now, because we're about 4 months into it, we're still so early. Every day does feel like a battle. It just gets kind of like it's less and less of a battle, I guess. It's every day I battle with my emotions. I'm up, I'm down. If he says something in a tone that I don't like, I find myself questioning everything, as I'm sure I'm going to do for a while. But the biggest thing too, I'm trying to learn to be patient with myself, because I'm not a very patient person. I want things done in a good amount of time. So I'm learning how to give myself, more time to heal and things like that. But yeah, I don't, I think eventually we'll get there. It's just going to take a long time to get there. And, as far as we talk about the finances and things, and he's totally fine, because that first night I basically laid everything out on the table. I said, I am taking over everything. You're not going to have access to anything. I opened up a new bank account, and like all the accounts, I took all the passwords, I pay the mortgage, I pay all the bills, I changed all the passwords. I have full access to everything now. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like that's enough though, because I always feel like he's always been 3 steps ahead of me. So I find myself questioning that, but you can only do what you could do. But so when we talk about things like if and when he'll ever get the finances back and stuff like that, I feel so far from that. Like that
Yeah.
just feels like it may never happen.
And that's
You
fair.
know,
That's absolutely
yeah,
fair.
yeah. It's hard though. It's because I start to feel bad about it though too, even though I know I shouldn't feel bad about it. You know, because he's the one making the money, and I think that's why right now I feel so bad about it. But it's just what's necessary. That's what we need in our life, and to make sure that I have to make sure that I protect our home and our children and myself. So, but it's hard. We've always shared everything. We've always shared the finances. We've always shared everything together. So, and also by me taking over the finances, that's also been kind of another reason for my anger, because now the burden of the finances, as much as he's making the money, I'm watching where all of it's going now. So now I'm feeling that added stress. So if we don't have enough money for something or happens, I am now the one that is like having to pay for everything. So now it's all resting on my shoulders.
Yeah, it would be easier if he hadn't done this. Then it
Yes.
wouldn't be so stressful for me. And that I can
Yes.
see that very well. If he hadn't have been gambling, we would have plenty of money to take care of this, and I wouldn't be stressed about it. And yeah, I can see where that plays in. And one thing that I hope that this will help, that I could say to you is, and this is what I say to recovery and the women that are in my in the Broke Girl Society Facebook group, is we can't compare our journey to anybody else. So when you read those things, and I know even on the addiction side, Some of those posts can be triggering, especially when there's a lot of day one again, day one again. Um, they can be triggering to us because it just feels like like it does get heavy, like, oh man, all these people are struggling. Am I going to be able to do this? But one thing that really, really helped me is I just quit comparing my journey to those people. They're going to have to figure this out. Every time there's a day one, you figure out what put you there, and then you fix it, and then you go again. And if you fall again, fine, fix it, pick yourself back up, and go. But there are people that are 20, 30 years in recovery. There are spouses whose husbands haven't gambled for 20, 30 years. I mean, so that there is success, and that there's failure. But the thing is you just have to focus on your journey. You can't compare it to either. You just have, you guys are doing the work and showing up and doing this together. And that's the important part. That's what you need to focus on. And I think when you take yourself outside of that element of looking at where other people are, it can really change the perspective of your journey.
Yeah, so absolutely. We're working on it.
Well, and I know, and it's just every day you're going to feel stronger. But when, as hard as this addiction was for me to go through and for me to experience and for what I've done, it's given me a different perspective on addiction, of course, of being an addict. It's made me look at addiction completely different. Like this whole level of empathy has opened up in me that I didn't have before, because I didn't admit that I was an addict. So when I would see like an addict outside the convenience store or something like that, I'd be like, oh man, they need to get it together. But now I look at them completely different. Now I look at them as somebody's family member, and somebody that's struggling with a problem. How would you say that that's changed you and your view of addiction?
Yeah, I would say the same exact thing. I feel the exact same way. It's funny because when you talk about people with addictions, it's the picture that you get in your mind is somebody stumbling drunk somewhere, or, drug addictions and things like that. So I feel the exact same way. You're so quick when you're not dealing with it, or when you don't have a family member dealing with it, you're so quick to pass so much judgment on them. And you're so quick to think that they're so weak-minded, and that, well, they don't love their family enough, or they can't get themselves together. You think it's so easy. And that's exactly the way that I used to think, because I did not understand it. But after digging so deep into Steve and figuring out what made him do this, honestly, he's a very strong person. He's very strong. And I feel like, especially through all of this, I think it takes so much courage to dig so deep into yourself, and to try to figure out everything, because it's not easy. Everything that's coming up inside of him, it has been a struggle for him. And I commend him so much, because he's doing it for himself, but the biggest thing, he's doing it for me, and he's doing it for his children. And I think that this is also wonderful because, if in the future one of our children, struggle with the same thing, maybe we can help them. I hope that we can. It's going to help us be a little bit more open-minded about it. We almost wonder if it could be something genetic, because his father struggles with his own addictions. So, but his father won't admit it. That's the thing. His father is so far from where Steve is. And I commend him for that as well. He wants to be the exact opposite of that. He doesn't want to live that life. He wants to live a happy life. He wants to live a life with his family, and he's trying everything in his power to do that. I commend so much for everything that he's done. It's been just as much of an emotional roller coaster for him, because there have been so many things in his past that has been brought up that he hasn't even realized it. So I think that it's just as hard for him. But yeah, it's all of this has definitely taught me to be more open-minded, and not just, if people need help, there's nothing wrong with that. If people are struggling with addiction, there's nothing wrong with that. It does not make them weak-minded. It does not make them weaker than I am. I can't say I'm a better person because I've never suffered through that. Lord knows I have my own issues. So there's nobody in this world that's perfect. So, it's, I hope that, anyone going through this and people's spouses, I hope that they could eventually see that. I know how hard it is at first, because at first I didn't want to see it either. I just wanted to see it as what he did to me. I didn't want to look at it as though why he did it, or, all the reasons behind it. I'm just like, well, this is what you did to me and you messed us up, and still my mind will wander down the hole every now and again, but I have to just keep telling myself, he has his reasons and he's working on it, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
your brain takes you to places that, you're always going to think negatively, but you have to learn how to retrain your thinking.
It's the same with the addict. We have to learn to retrain how we think and how we cope. It's not, we couldn't imagine it would be any different for somebody else too, especially coming into addiction. But I think it's interesting too, when we're struggling with addiction, to have those conversations with the younger generation or the next generation, so that maybe they can kind of have an understanding of it or an idea of it, just like he saw his father dealing with his addictions. Do you think that a conversation with your own kids later on about this addiction would be helpful?
We did talk about that. At first I was kind of like, no, I don't want them to know. But honestly, when they're old enough, of course, because now they're only, 4 and 7.
Right.
But I would almost think that if we I'm open to having that conversation with them, especially if I do see that they have patterns of some sort of addiction. I would definitely, and Steve is very open to talking with the kids about it, because he just doesn't want them to end up how he did, or he wants them to know that if they are going to struggle with it, that they will always have our support. So yeah, I'm just, in general, we're very open-minded in talking to them about everything. I don't really want to hide things from my kids. I don't want to, they're very smart nowadays too. Kids are like whips and they pick up on everything.
They
So,
are.
um, yeah, so I know that they kind of know that something is going on in the house too, as much as, we try to hide it. We haven't really fought about it, but we do talk about it. And sometimes we do talk about it when they're within earshot, and even though they may be playing, they're listening and they're able to pick up on emotions. So, if they came to us one day and they said, "Hey, what was that about?" We'll tell them, because I think it is important for younger children to know and be more aware of it.
Yeah, and I think it's great that they see how you're communicating about it, how you're working through it. And that maybe will give them hope too, if for some reason, or maybe they see somebody else struggling in their life, like maybe as they grow older and they come in contact with it, they can see it from a different light too, and maybe offer a different kind of hope and empathy and things like that. I mean, it all starts with a conversation to me. And when we're struggling with addiction, just transparency, honesty, those are the things that are truly gonna get us through it. The love of family, the support of family, the support of the different groups that we're all in, and all these, there's so many tools out there available to not only the addict themselves, but the affected family members of an addict, which is great. I really appreciate you taking your time today and just talking to us about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.